My name is Alexandra Emanuele. I'm the digital content editor with GFSR. Today, I'm going to be interviewing Darren Detweiler. Darren is the founder and president of Detweiler Consulting Group. He's the director of regulatory affairs of food and food industry and a professor of food policy at Northeastern University in Boston, Massachusetts. So thank you so much for taking some time to speak with us today, Darren.
Thank you.
So we were just chatting about, this topic that is, I think, near and dear to your heart. You've written 2 books on the subject now, supporting executive decision makers in building the future of food regulatory technology. We kind of broached what that means and what the future of that means for the future of companies. I know that you've worked closely with industry to help industry bridge that divide and kind of understand what that means, because I think that can sound like a little bit how to understand and bridge that divide for a lot of people. So maybe you can just, for people who aren't familiar with it, kind of break it down into layman's terms, I guess.
Sure. So, right now we're in a world where there are advances in science and there are advances in technology. Many times we look at technology in terms of the new opportunities that can be created, whether it's opportunities for profit or opportunities to align with strategies in terms of regulatory compliance. Ultimately, I look at it in terms of we can have all the technology in the world, but if it doesn't help us actually make our food safer, then that's not necessarily going to achieve those goals when it comes to regulatory compliance, specifically when we're looking at food safety or perhaps food defense, food security, even authenticity measures. In many cases, it's not exactly as if there's going to be different technology for safety than for food defense or food authenticity, but a lot of different technology opportunities can exist where you can find, well, we can use this to verify these steps have been taken, or these audits have taken place, or that these specifications have been met, and that can work for food safety or food authenticity measures. But the big push here is that, we can make these little decisions in different levels within a company or at an entire company level. But the reality is that today's food supply, it is a global supply. And just as much as there's an ecosystem of our foods, there's also an ecosystem, what some are referring to as an ecosystem of technologies. It's not any one technology that is doing this work. And we can see this in our day-to-day life, all the different programs and software and hardware that we use to achieve just, the things that we, like from our office, achieve. It's no one piece of technology that takes care of that. And we often get frustrated when this piece of technology doesn't communicate or connect with this piece of technology, or we can't get the data from this device to this device, and we go through these steps. The same kind of situation exists in terms of this bigger view as technology really encompassing this ecosystem of technologies. And so as we were getting closer and closer to focusing on blockchain and e-ledgers and these issues, this was not in a vacuum where there were no outbreaks and recalls and things of that nature going on. We were looking at everything from the romaine lettuce events of 2018, 2019, other outbreaks and concerns, which were showing that not only was traceability an issue, but the lack of digitized data and records that were causing a problem in terms of being able to trace back, being able to have that transparency within a very complex distribution system. And it really started to highlight the fact that, again, this ecosystem not only depends on all the different technologies working together, but they depend on the fact that we can't be dealing with a paper-based system,
Mm-hmm.
and that the system over here is different from the system over there.
Mm-hmm.
And there has to be a way that we can truly, much like the journey of food from the farm to the fork, we have to look at the journey of information, if you will, from, some will go back to the seed, from the seed to the fork, and look at how that ecosystem has to account for all of those variabilities along that journey. And of course, we're talking about political borders. We're talking about geographic boundaries. We're talking about, you know, such varied companies and cultures. The culture of people working at this place and in this part of the industry versus the culture of the people working over here within manufacturing or distribution or retail. There's so many moving parts, and that this kind of ecosystem of spinning plates has to account for human intellect differences, data differences, and technology differences. And I found that we weren't really talking about that across the board when we were talking about this new, you know, blockchain and related technologies.
Mm-hmm. I hear from so many people that the digitization of records is so crucial in the traceability component, and that blockchain is going to be this solution to all of our problems. What do you have to say about that, or what are your thoughts on the subject?
A couple of thoughts. One is, some people have grown comfortable with the fact that if it's not digitized, it's harder to access, and you can only go back so far, and you can, in some cases, you know, hide information.
Mm-hmm.
Some people look at more information as, you know, creating more vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's trying to make sure that information stays within the hands of those who need to have it. It is the fear about private information, whether it be of the workers or intellectual property, like, you know, recipes or things of that nature within the company. And, you know, how is that going to be secure? How are we going to make sure that we can regulate that to verify that it's only in the hands of those people who are supposed to be accessing that? At the same time, there's a concern that there's a leap,
Mm.
right? Just because you win the first game of the season doesn't mean that you're going to go to the championship. And when, oh, we just need to have blockchain and we'll be able to make food safe, it kind of undermines the level of difficulty and the amount of what I refer to as Herculean effort, the amount of work, strength, and courage that would need to be in place in order to do this. And the blockchain is just a tool to help people.
Mm-hmm.
And I even refer to it as you know, one of Batman's tools in his bat belt.
Mm-hmm.
That tool, that
Mm-hmm.
bat tool alone
Mm-hmm.
is not enough. It
Mm-hmm.
takes that Herculean effort, that enormous amount of work, strength, and courage to make that happen, to go against cost benefit analysis and return on investment that might shy away from looking at the idea of investing in your mission and investing in training and your overall safety infrastructure. And we've seen this with outbreaks where, you know, major outbreaks from major companies, and in the aftermath, the CEO will come out and say, well, having learned our lesson, we're going to revisit our mission and invest more into this, and, you know, look at our training and look at this. And I often ask, why weren't you doing that all along? You know, you should always be looking at that. You should always be reevaluating. You should always be investing into, you know, what makes your brand, what makes your reputation, what makes you able to achieve your company's mission. And if food safety, authenticity, et cetera, are not part of your mission, then that's maybe part of the problem there. But the reality is that this Herculean effort is nothing new. People talk about the history of food safety. And when I wrote Food Safety Past, Present, and Prediction, I reflected on how after Upton Sinclair's 1906 book, The Jungle, the London Daily Times, in their literature review, said that it's unfortunate that we know that everything that Upton Sinclair wrote about was true. That unfortunately, the things that Mr. Sinclair described happened yesterday, are happening today, and tomorrow, and the next day, until some Hercules comes to cleanse the filthy stable. That was written in 1906. And I think about how appropriate that is today, and how, there's not really a Hercules. Here we're in this world of DC and Marvel superhero movies, and we know the difference between fact and fiction with superheroes. But I equate it to that idea of Herculean effort, that it's not able to have a scenario where any one device or platform or technology or person can solve all of our problems. That it really takes the Herculean effort of so many people from the farm or from the seed all the way through to distribution and manufacturing and retail and restaurant and to the home, in order to make sure that our food is as safe as can be.
Absolutely. Just to wrap it up, I think you're really talking about supporting executive decision makers in your whole your books, and I find that really fascinating. But I'm wondering if you see a future in which that future technology will just continue to outpace our decision makers, or at some point do you think our decision makers will be kind of matching the speed of the technology that is helping us, obviously not the end all be all solution, but helping us make food safer to a certain degree?
Well, I think that one of the things we've learned is that the amount of information that's out there doubles at such a short span of time today, as opposed to 25, 50, 75, 100 years ago. That, as our food comes from farther distances, as it involves more steps, as consumers are more aware of these issues and actually are looking for evidence of compliance, of certifications, of regulatory elements, that it becomes a much more difficult target to hit. And quite honestly, hold on one second. Quite honestly, if anyone in the food industry, and I could say the same thing about quite honestly any industry, if anyone thinks that it's going to be one solution and that one solution is going to be the only thing you need for the next 25, 50 years, they're sorely mistaken, because there's going to be so many opportunities to revise and update. I mean, just the last 30 years has shown us that, some technologies that we took for granted, no one ever uses, or new technologies that we thought were going to be around forever were replaced by other technologies. And, the same thing's going to happen, whether you're talking about data collection, data storage, data analysis, predictive analytics, remote sensing. Even now during this pandemic, the emphasis on remote sensing that's going on, and it's not only looking at indicators in terms of food safety, but even worker safety, looking at environmental measures in terms of atmospheric and environmental measurements for employee safety. There will be new challenges, there will be new opportunities, and there will be new, more efficient and more effective technologies along the way. But I think that you really hit something with extreme accuracy. All of these changes and opportunities and new versions are going to be pointless if we don't work to digitalize the information that we are collecting, if we don't strengthen our communication and our protocols around and analytics and what we do with this. We can literally get the best answers from the analytics team, hand that over, and find out that the financing team, we don't really need to do that. and they may clash with the quality assurance team
Mhm.
or with the executives at the highest levels in terms of interpreting how this data aligns with the mission and overall regulatory compliance. So it's not about making sure that this one team over here understands the data collection and the implementation or the implications of that technology. It really has to be this diverse, interdisciplinary, industry-wide, company-wide understanding in terms of what does this technology mean? What can we really do with it? And how are we going to truly benefit from this technology, rather than, yep, we got this technology and we're not using it to actually achieve what we want to achieve. And of course, what is that bill, if you will, that's sold to consumers? Why does this cost more? Well, it costs more because we use technology to do this. Okay, but the technology you're using, it protects you in terms of liability, but doesn't really protect consumers,
Mhm.
because we don't want the technology decision making in terms of purchasing and setting up and training it, but also in terms of the long-term use of it
Mhm.
down the road. Find that those who are using this new technology within a company are myopic of why the technology was actually put into place in the first place.
I mean, so many good points. I feel like we could just keep going and have another whole conversation on that. But I have to stop you right there. Thank you so much for chatting with me, Darren. It was a pleasure. So I'll talk to you again another time.
All right, happy to do so.